To the program tonight, those here in the live audience, those out on the live broadcast, fellow metaphysical humanists, guests, and everyone else. Nice to have everyone with us. I guess I should start with the gong. Got to keep tradition, you know. People are not happy unless we do the gong. All right, tonight on the program, we've got the first part's going to be, what is divine energy? We're going to be talking about that. It's an interesting subject. It's a bit broad, but we're going to nail it down. Dr. Hunter will be speaking on when children see spirits, and then I'll pick up the last part on the case for life after death, why it makes sense, and not just because we believe it, but why we believe it. The Spirit of Life service is a weekly service of the Metaphysical Church of, it's old name now, the International Church of Metaphysical Humanism. It's also one of our educational programs. Our mission is to explore and empower the human spirit. We have some other educational programs as well that we offer. EmpoweredRecovery.com is one of them, which offers help for friends and family of alcoholics and addicts. Paranexus.org is an association of anomalous researchers. Of course, MetaphysicSinstitute.org, where we offer bachelor's, master's, doctoral degrees in metaphysics, metaphysical science, spiritual counseling, life coaching, paranormal related areas, and many more. Holistic healing is another one. ICHSworld.org is where folks can take standalone courses in various metaphysical topics. All right, so let's get on with our reading of the 9 principles of belief of the International Church of Metaphysical Humanism. Number 1, as sentient and evolving human beings, we not only believe in practicing and living by the principle do no harm, but also in the principle of do right, thus enhancing the vibrational level of humanity. We believe in the indomitable power of the human spirit to ultimately triumph in the face of any dilemma. The answers we seek already exist within us. We invoke and exert the counselor and guru within. Number 3, we believe that we alone are responsible for and capable of solving human social problems, and believe the roots of those solutions lie in exploring, understanding, and empowering the human condition. Number 4, we embrace the differences that make all human beings unique, recognizing that we all come from star material and are therefore equal, irrespective of heritage, beliefs, gender, or gender preference. One planet, one race, one ancestry, one destiny. Rather than a supreme being, this is number 5, rather than a supreme being, we recognize and honor the divine energy that exists in all living things, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. Number 6, we believe the nature of a human being encompasses both a physical and spiritual aspect, and that human consciousness survives death of the physical body in a coherent fashion. Thus, death opens a new chapter of life and conducts the individual into a higher state of existence. We'll be talking about that tonight, too, later on. Number 7, we believe in self-acceptance, self-responsibility, and respect for free will, and that these 3 synergistically create the goal of self-completeness. Number 8, we believe in the value of practical education in metaphysics, metapsychology, and life skills as a means of empowering the human spirit and enhancing the human condition. We maintain an open but grounded mind to potential realities as yet undescribed by science. And number 9, we believe that discovering the true nature of consciousness and human existentialism will ultimately have a positive impact on human evolution and peaceful coexistence. And of course, more information on these 9 principles of belief is available at metaphysicalhumanism.org. All right, the first part of the program tonight is on divine energy. What is divine energy? Well, let's start with the definition of divine. I'm pretty sure we all know what divine means. It can relate to God, or and if we think about that, related to an enlightened being, or presumably related to a higher form of life, that sort of thing. Those are all kind of connotations of the word divine. Well, when we say that we believe in the divine energy of all living things, what does that mean? Well, let's talk about what it doesn't mean. many people on the planet believe in many gods. There are a zillion of them. Of course, there's the typical gods of Judeo-Christianity, Islam, and so forth. Got a cough. And I have water. So I'm going to take a drink, and it is water. Do you believe that? I would. Yeah, check me out later. All right, so many gods, many names. Yahweh, Jehovah, Christ, Allah, Great Spirit, and again a zillion others. Those are some of the names. Then there's the titles. There's God, Lord, Creator, Source, Divine Source, Spirit, Universal Consciousness, and the list can go on too. Let's think about the concept of God for a moment, and we'll kind of clarify metaphysical humanism's stance on God, if people don't already know. The idea that there is a higher being up there in heaven or out there who created us and created everything sounds really nice and is comforting to a lot of people. The problem with it is it just doesn't fit all of the facts of this planet. Yes, it's nice to know that there's some being out there who has unconditional love for everybody, and if there was unconditional love, then it's very difficult to reconcile why there's so much bloodshed on this planet, so much bloodshed in the name of God or gods, whatever they may be. So when we really take a close look at this whole God concept that we've all probably been raised with, it just starts to lose water. It doesn't make sense anymore because it's not consistent. You can't have an all-loving God on one hand and have the molestation of children on the other hand and have it allowed. Yes, religion tries to answer that with the devil, but again, that's just a religious construct. It requires faith to believe in. The point that I want to make is this. I just read our 9 principles of belief. Everyone's here, everyone's on the live broadcast, you're watching a church program. All of this was born as a thought in the mind of one man, and you're looking at him. The 9 principles of belief, I wrote them. They were mine. I put them together. Of course, there was input on them from our board and so forth, but I wrote them. Everything you're seeing here, I wrote, I created it. That's no different than religion. Any religion you want to pick. It all started in the mind of a man or a woman, whoever, and was evolved from that point forward. It started at a time when people didn't know what to make of the loud thunderclaps that happen, or the natural catastrophes that can happen with weather and so forth, or earthquakes. They didn't know what to make of that. And so the idea of a God, an angry God, in many cases, came to light, and it's just that. And then it evolved over time. But it's just a concept. It's one of many. There are other ideas too. There's pantheism, which is what essentially we believe, and that's basically the divine energy in all living things, the divinity, the specialness, the life force in all living things. That's pantheism. There's atheism, right? The absence or the lack of belief in any kind of God. And then you've got people all across the board. You've got agnostics, which is in the middle. I don't know. That's what an agnostic is. I don't know. Don't have the answer. And again, they're across the board. You've got everyone from the fundamentalist religious side to the fundamentalist atheistic side, really, the materialists. And then you've got everybody in the middle. All right, so the point that I'm really trying to make with this is that when it comes to the Judeo-Christian God or Islamic God or any other God for that matter, we are atheistic. Metaphysical humanism is atheistic because it's just somebody's idea, and it doesn't stack up. When it comes to the question of whether there is a creator of all of this stuff, we're agnostic. We don't know. The problem with this and with many other metaphysical related topics, is that they are unfalsifiable. That means you can either prove them right or prove them wrong. Now, we can get indications of the way things are, and I'll be talking more about that in the last part on the case for life after death. We get indications. So what's this divine energy that I'm speaking of? We don't refer to a God. We don't worship anyone. We don't worship a God. We don't worship the universe. We don't worship aliens or anyone. We don't worship ourselves. We try to empower people. We don't need to worship anyone. So the question is, where did it all come from? I don't know. Nobody does. There's lots of theories out there. Ancient aliens is one that made us here or brought us here or genetically modified us here, whatever. There's lots of theories. Some are more serious than others. I do know that consciousness exists. And let's focus on that for a moment. Consciousness. Where is the mind? Where is the mind located? You know, science cannot locate the mind. There are some materialist scientists who say that it's in the brain, and as a result of physiological processes, chemical processes in the brain, but that doesn't stack either. A person can have brain damage and the memories reallocate elsewhere. In other words, the mind is non-local. We don't know where the mind is. And let's talk about consciousness. We all are conscious, right? Okay, most of us are conscious, right? That was a joke. And I just want everyone to know that when I make jokes, you need to laugh because it helps me to stay in my delusion that I'm funny, okay? Consciousness, it permeates really everything. And I have a hypothesis of my own that I'll share with you that I'm still working on, trying to develop it, trying to get a little more in depth on it. And it's a process. But if you think of life, and think of it this way, that if it's alive, it has a measure of consciousness. It's like that form of life can hold, for lack of a better term, some measure, some slice, some part of consciousness. The higher the life form, the more capacity for a greater measure of consciousness. Think about that for a minute. That would explain a lot. That would explain why a tree is a tree and a dog or a cat is a dog or a cat, and why apes are a little further up the chain and why humans are really at the top as far as we know. If you think about that, it makes a lot of sense. And so now we can begin to see that divine energy, that consciousness, and that's what I'm referring to as the collective consciousness as divine energy. It's all around. I don't like to call it universal consciousness because I don't want to imply that there is some sentient, sapient, thinking entity that is universal consciousness. It's like the internet, the World Wide Web. It's out there, and we all have computers that we dial into that World Wide Web, right? And the power of the World Wide Web with all these millions or billions of computers is very powerful, far more powerful than one computer, but we still are dialed into it. It's like us. We have that measure of consciousness. The more features your computer has, the more power that it has, the more it can do, the faster it can do it. We go back a few years and try to fire up an older computer, it's not going to be as fast, it's not going to be able to handle as many calculations and so forth. But the newer ones will. It's kind of like life. And so there's this consciousness, this divine energy. And you know, I've been trying to come up with a better name for it, and I can't think of one better than what was on Star Wars, you know, the Force. May the Force be with you. I mean, think about that for a minute. It's this force that's out there. And consciousness accounts for a lot of things. It's a powerful, powerful thing. Our own consciousness is powerful. It's powerful. And when we use the power of deliberate intent, we can kind of channel that consciousness a little bit. You ever really wanted something really bad and you focused on it? and you worked at it, and finally you got it. One could say that you made that happen, but it's your consciousness, your conscious thought, your diligent action, and your work toward it, your belief. And that's true with anything. We can do anything we want if we believe in ourselves. I'll talk about that a little bit next week. So this collective consciousness is a divine energy, and it permeates everything to one extent or another, to one degree or another. I don't know if, here's just some more support for this argument. Back in 1966, a polygraph expert by the name of Cleve Baxter did some experiments. Maybe you've heard of his research on primary perception. He wondered what would happen if he connected his polygraph machine to a plant, to the leaves on a plant. And he did. He got a little bit of a reading or anything. I don't even know how much of a reading he got, not enough to really write home about. But then he thought, I wonder what would happen if I lit a match and burned one of the leaves. And instantly, the polygraph started reacting. He hadn't done it. He just thought it with the intent of doing it. That's deliberate intent, right? Now think about that. And if you want to do further research on this, Cleve Baxter, B-A-C-K-S-T-E-R, look it up on YouTube. You can find these videos of his research, and they're videos from back in the day. Fascinating. So if a plant can pick up on our deliberate intent, how much more so can other people? It's the vibe, right? We all pick up a vibe from people, which I call the energy signature. We pick it up. And we may not always consciously pick it up, but we pick it up. And animals can pick up our vibe, can't they? I mean, you go to a dog and you tone a voice, sometimes even the stance, the body language will affect a dog or a cat. They'll know. They'll know when you're going to play. We have a cat, and well, we have more than one. Okay, my wife has one and I have three. She doesn't want to be the crazy cat lady. So, one of her cat, beautiful white cat, he's deaf. Got a green eye and a yellow eye. Blue eye and a yellow eye. Blue eye and a green eye. Boy, the first thing to go is a memory. That's what they say, right? All right. He knows when I want to play. If he's sitting there and I'm around the corner, and if I peek around the corner, it's the peekaboo thing. He knows, and he plays. Or if I, get the stance on like I'm going to get him, he knows. So we can see that this consciousness is there. It permeates. And our deliberate intent can be picked up by anything, really. We just don't know that the plants and trees, I mean, you think about going and cutting a tree down in your yard, now you probably get an idea that the tree's saying, oh no! Not that it can say anything, but that's the idea. All right, so what is divine energy? It's collective consciousness. It's our consciousness. It's all the consciousness that there is. If you want to do some more research on another interesting thing, look up the random number generators that are going on. They're doing research on that, the random number generators. They will return random numbers. That means if you toss a coin 100 times, truly random, you'll get 50 heads and 50 tails. The random number generators will react to global consciousness. And they did on 9/11. They've got the statistics, they've got the recordings, they've got the data. In fact, the random number generators became less random in the hours just prior to 9/11, to those events, planes hitting the Twin Towers. Interesting stuff. So, what is divine energy? It's just consciousness, collective consciousness. It's everything that is like the World Wide Web of consciousness, and we're all dialed into it. All right, let's move on to our next topic, which will be with Dr. Vicki Hunter. She's going to be talking about the psychic perspective segment, when children see spirits, and we'll get her coming on ready to go. When she's done, I'm going to talk about the case for life after death and why metaphysical humanism has that as one of our beliefs. So let us turn our attention to Dr. Hunter. Let's make sure we got you sound.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here again. I'm always glad to be here. It's fun. We're talking about divine energy, and it kind of lends into the subject of when children see spirits, you know, because I always say that kids are like hot off the cosmic plane. There's a period of time that I refer to as grounding, and I think usually it's in that first 7 to 9 years, where the soul is grounding into the body and adjusting to this reality. There's a lot of psychology, of course, that goes with it, but children are also more sensitive to other energies and alternate energies. And to me, it just makes sense that from a soul coming from that collective consciousness, if you will, that divine energy, comes into a body, it's a hypersensitivity to both worlds. And there's many indigenous cultures especially that refer to, that the veils between the worlds are thinned in a way. And some people keep it and some people don't. And some people can have life after death experiences and feels thinned again. So if we take that notion of a soul coming to a body and grounding into a body and adapting, and the years that it takes to get your footing, so to speak, then it's not unusual to think of children being able to be sensitive to other worlds or entities or beings in other worlds. So spirits, as people say, oh, my child has seen a ghost, or my child is seeing spirits, or my child is talking to an imaginary friend. In my reality, that's pretty normal. I think that's a good thing, provided we also remind ourselves to help a child to continue to ground into this reality. So there's a number of things that I often recommend. I'm really condensing this into a very short amount of time, but is the empowerment of the child for self-thinking, to rationalize, to critically think and choose good versus bad. The thing is, it's not unusual for children to be fearful. And that's a pretty normal thing. It's because everything is unfamiliar, or there's little sensitivities and they don't know what to do with that. And if we are afraid of certain things, then that projects onto our kids, except we don't know how they're translating that necessarily. They can very easily be, embellishing that fear because they're living in this other hypersensitive kind of pseudo-reality. And I don't mean to make it sound like kids aren't really grounded until they're 9, because that's not necessarily true. And not all children see spirits. But I believe that all children are sensitive to other energies. Children are sensitive to vibes of other people and so on. But what usually happens is kids get the boogeyman. They, there's somebody here, somebody's scaring me, and there's monsters under my bed. And so it turns into that fear. So what we can do is, and I have worked with many families and many kids, not only my own, and even my grandkids now, is that empowerment of you choose. You choose whether or not you want to talk to those spirits. You can tell them to go away. You decide what kind of conversation you're going to have. In dreams, you can actually go into a dream and have a conversation. You can consciously commit yourself to the dream state. Meaning, if I'm going to have a dream, I can say to myself, okay, when I go to that dream, if I encounter anything I don't like, I'm going to make sure I tell them to go away and don't bug me. It works. I know it sounds odd, but it works. You can do the same thing with children is, well, the next time you have that dream and there's a boogeyman, you just ask him what he wants, and if he's not going to talk to you nice, you just tell him to go away. I've often empowered kids with other kinds of language that's not for broadcast. And sometimes parents don't necessarily care for that too much, but it is a bold way of giving kids a certain amount of power that they wouldn't have or be given in daily life. So telling those boogeymen, so to speak, to go away then begins to change their minds about what's fearful and not fearful, and to make friends and choose what kinds of spirits or other worldly beings there might be to be more friendly. So that is I choose who I'm going to be friends with, I choose how I'm going to behave, and I'm going to choose who has to go away if they're not behaving how I want. So that's that early childhood empowerment that helps also to ground into this reality. And keep in mind that, kids are always, we are even as adults, but kids more so, the way they signal information is through all these multiple sensories. So we think we're doing the right thing in one way, but it's translated to their head quite a different way. And it's interesting, and I say this because having raised my own kids, my son was about 8 years old when his little buddy down the street came over, and he had been recovering from the flu, and we were eating pancakes. One of my favorite stories. But we were eating pancakes, and unfortunately he got sick right after he ate. But he went home and told his mom that Vicky's pancakes made him sick, when in fact he had the flu. But what's now into his memory and how he's creating a fear is pancakes make him sick. Well, one day he may actually eat pancakes again, and he'll be okay with that, but then he'll think, well, Vicky's pancakes made him sick. But years later, he's now, sorry, my dog is not feeling well over here. That's a lot of noise. So he may later figure out, well, maybe Vicky's pancakes didn't make me sick, maybe I did have the flu. But every time he hears the name Vicky, his body is going to respond. There's so many ways of input into our memory, and we don't know how. It's like taking a whole bunch of thoughts and they collide. Well, imagine the child who is seeing spirits, and that's their normal reality, and to have imaginary friends, and yet other people are saying, well, that's not real. So now there's self-doubt. Now there's self-questioning. I think it's also equally an error to impose the idea of spirits upon kids. Well, assuming that that's, Grandpa Joe or, Uncle Bill or somebody, oh, that must be so-and-so, and sometimes we project our own emotions, our own desires on what we think the children could be seeing or who they're having a relationship with. So I think that there's just a sensitivity and an objectivity that we can have to allow the child to experience their own, shifting, if you will, in that, very gradual transition into this reality, usually at around age 6. And that's my experience in the reading I've done and other testimonies. Usually around 6 or 7, it begins to fade as the child is more interested in school and their friends and so on. They're less interested in the other. Now, there are a rare number of young people, myself included at that point, whose so-called imaginary friends never go away. I don't know if we need to continue a dialogue about imaginary friends. I think that to acknowledge that they're there, but if you've got an imaginary friend who's saying, okay, let's go play here, and the mom is saying, well, no, you've got to leave your imaginary friend and come over here. So there's the shit. So we have to make sure that we continue to ground, and again, ground in this reality as a priority, because that's what we're learning is to be human. And so not to allow that world to take over, because it can, and then we can get disassociations. So it's just being for parents who are experiencing this with their kids, it's just to, you know your child, and you can have that, really good instinct about your child. Don't be afraid, but don't necessarily be too excited either because, oh, I have a gifted child who can see spirits, and that's great. It's just to be more casual about it and allow the child to be expressive and share the experience, but then be able to move on with the day. It's okay, that's good, but now let's go bake cookies. I have a daughter whose imaginary friend, and she could speak in another language, by the way. It was a very profound experience. Very often, this little friend could actually take over, and I'd have to say, no, no, no. You have to put Belinka in your pocket now, or tell Belinka to go away because we're going to have supper, and that I can't have that here because she'd be talking in another language to her friend. It was a very one of the more unusual cases of this was a very real being. So, to be honest, even a matter of fact, today is her 33rd birthday, I might add, and she still remembers some of that language that she was taught by her so-called spirit friend. What are the theories about what that was? That could very well be a connection to an altered dimension of reality, like a reincarnation at some point, or a past life connection. And we'll talk a bit about that next week when children actually come in telling you memories of where they've been, who they've been with, what they used to do. So, because it's multiple. It's not just about when kids see spirits or have imaginary friends. There's this whole other dynamic that can and very often does happen as a child is transitioning. Each of us is transitioning from the other world to this world. And of course, we spend a lot of years here, and then we transition back into the other worlds. And again, there's a lot of theories. I believe these to be fairly accurate, not all. I have sat with kids and I say, look, you just got to let all that go and tell them just let that stuff go and just let them be kids. Like, let them explore life here, because that is singly the most important thing. So I hope that is a little bit insightful, and more than anything, I hope it's reassuring and encouraging to people that there are lots of us who live in this other reality, learning to deal with all kinds of experiences with young people and kids. And I'm just really glad that it's more open and talked about. So if anybody has any questions, or anybody's in the chat room might have some questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Are there any questions in the chat room, son? I guess there's no questions, Dr. Hunter.
Well, good. Well, thanks. I'm, again, glad to be here. And I know that you're going to transition into the life after, so that's great. Good topics tonight. I like it. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate the good information as always. Okay, and one of the things I intended to mention at the outset for the benefit of our broadcast viewers is that we're now streaming in 3 different resolutions. So we're streaming in high definition as well as standard definition. And so if it happens to be buffering or hanging up or anything on the viewer, just look at the instructions there on the viewing page and you'll see how to change the resolution to a lower one. You can also watch this live broadcast on your iPad, your tablet, your smartphone. The instructions are there. Just basically go to the web page. Okay, so for our third segment then, Exploring the Unknown, we're going to talk about the case for life after death. Huge topic, huge question. Do we live on after we die? And most of the world probably believes, yes, we move on. We continue to live, so it's really life after life. There's a number of people, particularly materialists, who basically believe, no, this is it. So it makes up a big part of the scientific community. This is it. That's all we can expect. In fact, there's a couple of well-known individuals who made a couple of quotes. Let me read a couple of quotes to you. First one's by Thomas Edison. He wrote, "I cannot believe in the immortality of the soul. No, All this talk of an existence for us as individuals beyond the grave is wrong. It is born of our tenacity of life, our desire to go on living, our dread of coming to an end. So he did not believe in life after death, immortality of the soul. Another one is Einstein, and this is what Einstein wrote. I cannot imagine a God who rewards and punishes the objects of his creation, whose purposes are modeled after our own, a God, in short, who is but a reflection of human frailty. Neither can I believe that the individual survives the death of his body, although feeble souls harbor such thoughts through fear or ridiculous egotism. And I have a couple of thoughts on that. Next week I'm going to be talking about the power of belief, but I'm going to mention a couple of things. A lot of the world, most of the world, speaks of this sort of thing as if it's an absolute fact. Life after death, absolute fact. We don't live on after death, absolute fact. Life after death is unfalsifiable, meaning we cannot prove it right, nor can we prove it wrong. We don't know. There's some different types of proof that we can use and utilize. I'll be talking about that in a moment. But in my opinion, the height of egotism is believing that you know what happens when we die. Einstein says, no, it doesn't happen. People are egotistic if they think they need to live on. To me, the height of egotism is to say as a fact that they know exactly what happens. Nobody does. I don't care how much faith you have. I don't care how much you believe. Look, I believe we live on after we die. I do. I believe it. But I don't know if that's true. But I have some compelling evidence to suggest that it is. Therefore, I believe in it. And that's the whole point of metaphysical humanism. That's what I try to get across to our anomalous research students and anybody else for that matter. If you're going to believe something, fine. Fine. Be able to defend it to a reasonable degree. And we'll talk about that. One of the things that neither one of these two very famous men realized or appreciated is that people need hope. There's more to life than just science. There's more to life than just religion. You know, there's the spiritual side of life. When we have loved ones who have died, we want to know they're okay. I mean, who wants to think, well, they're just dead. They're no different than a rock now. There's no existence. That's not comforting. And I'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but human beings need hope. And apparently neither Edison nor Einstein appreciated this fact. Let's talk about objective proof versus rational proof. Objective proof involves being able to repeat the experiment in a scientific fashion, and that means you got to be able to measure the phenomena or the whatever you're trying to replicate. So one of the big problems with science is they can't measure life after death. They can't measure the paranormal. They can't measure Bigfoot yet. They can't measure a UFO yet. Well, they might be able to, but they're just not talking. But the point is they can't measure the paranormal in life after death spirits. They can't measure spirits. They can't measure really psychic activity. They can to a point with Xena cards, but it's kind of primitive. And so scientists don't like to get involved in the whole paranormal, even in a lot of the metaphysical stuff. They don't like to get involved because they can't measure it. They just poo-poo it. That's not real. Paranormal's not real. Wow, really? I sure wish I could be so certain of something. But I can't, because I'm not ready to say, no, it doesn't exist. I'm ready to look at the facts, and that's the best scientific question, isn't it? What are the facts, and what do those facts tell us? That's what we want to know. So, objective proof. Got to be able to replicate it. You know, repeat the experiment, get the same results or similar results. But then there's another thing that I call rational proof. Because so much of what we do is unfalsifiable, meaning we can't prove it right or wrong, how do we know? Can we get any indications that it is one way or another? And I think yes. And that's rational proof. What's reasonable about it? That's why I said you want to believe something, fine. Be able to defend it to a reasonable degree. And that's rational proof. It's something that's reasonably compelling and logically defensible from a reasonable or rational perspective. In other words, rational proof must be based on a logically defensible conclusion. So let's consider several areas of rational proof for life after death. First one is the survival hypothesis. It's a big one. It's a good one. It's a strong, strong argument. The survival hypothesis is based on the first law of thermodynamics, which is also known as the law of the conservation of energy, which states energy can be changed from one form to another, but it cannot be created or destroyed. Thus, the total amount of energy available in the universe is constant. The survival hypothesis, by the way, is not complete without this law, this first law of thermodynamics. That means that the energy that's out there is out there, and it can be transformed into another type of energy, but it doesn't go away. For example, electricity is coming into this building, and it's powering the lights, the equipment, and so forth. It's being changed. If it goes to the light bulbs, that energy is now being converted from electricity to photons, right? Changing into light. Some lights give off heat. That's another transformation of energy. So the survival hypothesis simply means if we have this energy about us, which we do, consciousness, what happens when we die? Where does that energy go? It doesn't dissipate. That would violate physical laws. It doesn't just, turn off. Got to go somewhere. Something has to happen. It's interesting, too, Einstein wasn't a fan of life after death, and yet his very equation, special theory of relativity, E is equal to mc squared, actually provides a basis for life after death, because it means it's basically energy, which is the E, is equal to the mass, or the m, times the square of a constant. So energy and material things, they're interchangeable. It's just algebra. You can interchange. In anything that's physical, this podium, speaker stand, is made up of energy on the atomic level, right? And that's why so much can be ascertained about space travel, the space-time, the fabric of the universe. That's where a lot of scientists get their theories on dark energy, dark matter, and so forth. So, the survival hypothesis is a strong argument for life after death, because we don't just shut off. Another strong argument is near-death experiences. When you look at the phenomena worldwide, you see that people are reporting similar experiences. They see the bright light, they review their life, they're drawn down a tunnel or a path or something similar to that, the vast majority. They all talk about the same thing. Some will see Jesus because they're Christians. Some will see Buddha because they're Buddhists. It doesn't matter. But they all have a very similar story to tell, and they don't know each other. But then there's the shared death experiences. We talked about this a few weeks ago on the program. Shared death experiences, the dying person does in fact die, but the loved ones, whoever's gathered around, and many times it's nurses and doctors, by the way, they've seen this stuff. They are the ones who experience part of this phenomena with the dying person, the life review, the bright light, the room changes. Dr. Raymond Moody was the one who wrote the book Life After Life and Glimpses of Eternity, which the second one, Glimpses of Eternity, talks about shared death experiences, or SDEs. Shared death experiences, how can you explain that by oxygen deprivation of the brain? You can't. Strong proof that something goes on. Then there's psychic and paranormal experiences. I've done enough anomalous investigations to know that 95% of them can be explained through various means. One is psychological stuff, the I'm special syndrome. Others is just natural phenomena. And very rarely there's the hoaxers. But you know, most of it can just be ruled out. But then there are a few of these cases, these incidents that I can't explain. You know, you look for answers, you want to try to explain them, but you can't because they're compelling. And information comes that can be later verified. The late Hans Holzer, maybe you've read many of his many books, some of his many books. His way to investigate hauntings was to use a trance medium and record it. And he would go in and they would talk with the spirit. And he would later be able to verify facts and dates and things. That lends some strong evidence to the fact that somebody's out there. And a lot of people have these experiences. Most of them can be explained, but some of them can't. Then there's the psychic information. You know, I've been around enough psychics to know who's really gifted and who's not. And there are times when they come up with things that are very difficult to explain otherwise. Some of this can be explained like with the Akashic record. That's another topic for another time. But some of it can be, but not all of it. So, and speaking of paranormal experiences, since I'm on that, just an FYI, spirits can't hurt you. Forget what you see on TV. They cannot harm you. If they could, we'd all be in trouble. They can't. They have to abide by the respect for free will, too. One last reason that I'm going to suggest as a compelling argument, some may not buy this one, doesn't matter, but to me it's very important. In a world, it's like I'm doing a commercial, doesn't it? In a world where trees can live to 3,000 years old, it makes no sense that we die after 70, 80 years, does it? In a world where a turtle can live to 150 or more years, it makes no sense that we just die, and that's it. It makes no reasonable sense that it's this way. So to me, the reasonableness of it makes sense. And if we say, okay, well, what do we make of this then? What are we here for? Are we reincarnated? I mean, is this one chapter along the way? It could be. I don't know. Nobody knows. You know, some people say that we're just living one life and we have to learn the lessons we missed the last time. Okay, that's a hypothesis, sure, but doesn't make it true. Nobody knows. But I want to believe, and I optimistically want to hope that the next chapter will be a little better off than this one. Maybe we won't end up on a planet where everything eats everything else. I don't know. So, why are we here? I don't know. I do know why that we can answer that question. Some people say, well, what's the purpose of life? It's the wrong question to ask. A better question is, what's the purpose of my life? What can we do here and now? What kind of good can we do? What kind of legacy can we leave? That's the important things. Making the most out of this life. All right, that's all I've got on that. A couple of quick announcements. I want to remind our viewers that if you have not registered for the the One Planet Community.com, I'd like to encourage you to do that. That is a private network for ICMH members and any member of any of our educational programs. So if you're registered at ICMH, which is metaphysicalhumanism.org, or any of the others, the IMHS School, ICHS School, Paranexus, you can register for that. It's on those websites, so go take a look. We'd love to have you. I also want to mention one of my graduate students, Dr. Jacinta Impala-Lyankana. She is sponsoring for the second year, I believe, in a row, the Worry Free Day on March 1st. It's coming up from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in your time zone. So for more information, look up or go on the web at tapthegood.com, tapthegood.com, and look for the link for articles. Once you go there, you'll see some more information on Worry-Free Day on March 1st from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in your time zone. I'd like to thank our members here and abroad for donations. We appreciate those. Next week's topics are going to be the power and magic of belief by myself, and Dr. Hunter is going to talk about when children talk about past lives. And if we have another part, that will be announced. Otherwise, we'll do the Soul Light meditation. Speaking of the Soul Light meditation, is the last thing up here. We're going to do it just a little bit differently. Same thing, only different. We're going to start out like I normally do, and this time we're going to play some nice background music, ambient background music to kind of help the mood a little bit. I'm going to get you started, and then about halfway through it, I'm just going to shut up, and I'm going to let you just meditate for a moment. After about 5 minutes, we'll wrap it up and then wrap up the program. So we'll go ahead and we'll start our music. And I'd like you to find yourself in a comfortable position. You can either close your eyes or leave them open for the moment. Stare straight across from you. Pick some point on the wall, something. Or close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold on to it to the mental count of 3. And just release. This is a good time to just relax and let go. It's perfectly fine for the next few minutes. Nobody wants anything. It's your time. Another deep breath in through your nose. Hold on to it to the mental count of 3. And release it. I want you to focus on the sound of the music and the sound of my voice, and allow it to take you even deeper into relaxation. Imagine and visualize that beautiful glowing ball of light just above your head, your higher self. See it glowing, see it connecting with all other life. See it, its energy, feel its energy, and bring it on down right into the middle of your being. Feel its warmth. Feel its revitalizing energy. And I want you to allow that energy to just fill you up, fill up your entire body. Healing energy, nurturing, encouraging. This is you. You are powerful. You can do anything you want. You've got it all within you right there. Now for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to let you meditate. Be sure to send positive energy to those who are feeling ill, who are not well, who may need it. Encouraging energy to those who need it around the world, or to friends and family. And in a few moments, we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this up. back around. 1, feeling much better, rested. 2, feeling very good and energized. 3, allow that beautiful ball of light to go back to its home position. Open your eyes, take in a deep breath of positive energy, feeling good, feeling revived, revitalized, and understanding that you are enough. You are enough. All right, welcome back, everyone. I appreciate the time that you have spent with us this week. Really appreciate your time, those here in the live audience, those in the broadcast audience. We know you could be doing other things. I'm glad you are here with us. If you like what you're hearing over these weeks, tell somebody about it. Let them know. There's a lot more topics coming in the weeks to come. And don't forget the video archives that we have. There's links there on the broadcast page. And if you're hearing this elsewhere, metaphysicalhumanism.org, you can find the archive page. Till next week, encourage everyone to listen, think, learn, grow, and live. Thank you.